Man, we are just moving right along with the division predictions and division preview here at the OK Baseball Podcast. Welcome into the show, everyone. Christian Rao here with my good old friend Sean Doyle from Jace from the Couch. This is the OK Baseball Podcast. We're going to give you the NL West tonight. As we get to the West Coast, we'll got 5 of 6 divisions now going to be complete and done. Once we're done with this episode. But before we get to that division, Sean, we have always something to talk about. It looks like just 2 hours ago, something broke. I feel like the news gets a little more less and less as we get through these. We started off with the Rafael Devers breaking news. This one's not so breaking news, but still a pretty interesting pickup, if you will, because it's kind of confusing. And 2 hours ago, it broke that Adoldis Chapman is going to go to the Kansas City Royals. So my first reaction right off the bat, and actually I found out from your message, I was out on a run and I got the message from you. And I think the first thing I sent to you was just a whole bunch of dots and just why. So you broke the news to me. So what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is funny how, like, as we get the calendar ticks off the days, the news, the impact of the news, I guess, the size, the girth of the news it dwindles. But yeah, Aroldis Chapman going to Kansas City to the Royals. And your response was actually kind of more lengthy than mine because I didn't have a word. I didn't use. I stared at the screen and I had to like double check to make sure that was correct. And so when you look at it, it's odd, right? Because if you're Chapman, you want to kind of, I assume, you want to get back in the game and show everybody you're healthy and you're effective and you know that you're maybe possibly close to the elite reliever that you were. And so, you know, reestablishing your value makes sense for him. But on a team like Kansas City, where, you know, if our listeners will go back and listen to our AL Central episode, I don't know that that's the team that you want to try and reestablish value for. And if you're Kansas City, I mean, maybe they get more out of it. You know, if he is healthy and he is effective, maybe they can flip him in July. But this is, in all honesty, this might be my WTF move of the winter because it makes not much sense.
Well, it happened on the episode we thought it was going to happen, just not on the division, right? We thought it was totally going to be for the Colorado Rockies, which we're going to get to later in this episode. We thought they were going to have the WTF award for the second year in a row, obviously last year with the Chris Bryant pickup. But, you know, I'm with you at this. I know that Kansas City is trying to build up, and I hate to throw all this ill will towards Kansas City because what they're building is very impressive. They have a lot of great prospects, but I just don't know if that's the right piece. Now, obviously, you look at the deal, the stipulation here. It's a 1-year deal, $3.75 million with a couple of bonuses for performance. So obviously, it's going to be vested towards his performance. So it could be an easy flip. You're absolutely right. However, you know, when you just look at this, you've seen that he's had off-field issues and he's had clubhouse issues just recently with the New York Yankees. In the postseason, he was left off the postseason roster because of because of clubhouse issues. He missed a team mandatory practice. I'm pretty sure that was purposely. There was some bad blood between them. However the case, he was left off the roster. Now you go into Kansas City, Sean, with a young team when you're bringing in prospects and you have this guy Chapman being here. Now, obviously, it's a great chance for him to revive what happened in New York. We all know that things could get blown out of proportion in New York media, but moving forward, you got to think that that's got to be something that a small market team like Kansas City is definitely thinking about because we are.
Yeah. And, you know, I witnessed that, like watching the Toronto Blue Jays really focus on their young guys and putting a lot of emphasis on clubhouse character and things like that. So it is a little surprising to see somebody with baggage, you know, let's just call it that, coming in and, I don't know, mixing with young and up and coming stars like, you know, Bobby Witt Jr. and so on, right? Like it seems, you know, it seems odd, but you know, everybody deserves a second chance, and Kansas City is willing to roll the dice and take that chance on whatever Chapman can give them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see just how effective he can be in that role, because you know, whether the Royals go anywhere or not, you know, a good closer on a bad team can still save 20, 25 games, 30 games even. So, you know, it might be the only 30 games that team wins in any given year. So maybe Kansas City is hoping they've got lightning in a bottle here, but on the surface, it does look kind of odd.
Does. It looks really odd. At the beginning of your thought process here, when I asked you about the Chapman, you said that he has the potential to become an elite reliever again. At least that's his hopes. You said reliever. You didn't say closer. Do you think that he can ever get back to that closer role, or do you see he being the potential closer in Kansas City, a team that maybe not is the New York Yankees, a team that is competing to get to just the ALCS? We haven't seen them in the World Series in a very long time. Yes, that was a shot at the New York Yankees on this podcast. However, what is your thoughts on that? Do you think we can get him back to a closer status? Is that gone?
I mean, I don't know. Like, if you're the Royals, why not? Right? Like, what have you got to lose? Give it a shot. If you're a competing team, perhaps more and more competing teams are kind of going with high leverage innings, not necessarily a traditional closer role anyway. So I wonder if that may be kind of on the way out the door as a whole across baseball. But if you're Chapman, I think you kind of want that label. If it's me, I want to establish myself and get back to what I once was, right? I want to prove that I'm still that guy. So I can see him gunning for that closer tag, but I wouldn't be willing to hand him over the keys just because of the name on his driver's license.
Do you see him finishing the season with Kansas City, or is he exactly what we think he is, a trade chip for the deadline?
If he's healthy, I think he's a trade chip. Either way, I don't see him finishing the season with the Royals.
Good call. All right, let's get to what we were talking about, why we are here for tonight's episode, the NL West. I've been really excited to talk about this division because it seems like every year we see some very exciting things from these teams. And I think you could even say all 5 teams. Yes, Colorado, I will put you in that conversation because you might not be the most exciting, but you at least give us some things to talk about. You give us a lot of storylines in the conversation. So thank you very much on that one. Let's start off with the team with the hat behind me right here with Tatis sitting at the top of my baseball. Let's start with the San Diego Padres. I think they had probably one of the most craziest last 6 months than any team in baseball, period, of all time, period. I mean, they went out, they traded for Juan Soto, historic trade. I know that a lot of people thought that they just got a steal from Juan Soto. It's starting to look like that as well, based on the trade. Half of those players are not even on the respective teams that got traded. You're really looking like, for the most part, a straight up trade for Juan Soto, CJ Abrams. So San Diego, I think, just ran away with that one. We'll see what happens moving forward. Then in the free agency, they had offers out to Carlos Correa. Didn't happen. They had a huge offer out, $440+ million out to Aaron Judge. He decides to go back to New York to put that little C on his pinstripes. But then they go ahead and get Xander Bogaerts. And I think this was, honestly, if you look at it, you look through what they have, they get the skilled players, they get another shortstop on their team. It seems like they got about 55 on their 40-man roster. But Xander Bogaerts signs a impressive deal with the Padres to come over. Your thoughts on that? We'll dig a little bit more into San Diego and where he's going to fit. But what's your thoughts on Xander Bogaerts getting signed?
Amazing. I think it's, first of all, when we talk about the NL West, we've mentioned how the AL East might be the toughest division in baseball, but the NL West is definitely the most fun. From an outsider's perspective, of course, and maybe even an insider's, who knows? But I think the Bogart signing was interesting. I can almost picture him kind of like sitting there meeting with Boston's people and just breaking out into song and I know a place where the grass is always greener. Wow. Like, he's going out to Cali, right? And good for him. It was a bit of a shock, in all honesty, and I think it had a lot to do with them pivoting to Devers, the Red Sox. But for San Diego, when does it end? That's my question. One after another, and I think it ends with a World Series. And so if you're a fan of the San Diego Padres, I mean, you have to be sitting really good, full confidence, knowing that your team is going to go and get a World Series championship, and not just Xander Bogaerts, but all the other moves we're going to talk about. And of course, Tatis coming back as well. But signing Xander Bogaerts, in all honesty, I was a little surprised. Because you got this feeling, and same thing with the Mets too, right? You get this feeling like at some point they're done. They've reached their limit. But San Diego says hell to the no. They're gone for it. And good for them. Xander Bogaerts, they've got themselves a stud to go into an already studded lineup. So as surprising as it was, when you stop and think about it, they're in it, right? And it's not all that surprising, I guess.
Speaking of in it, you were in that song right there. I'm pretty sure we're going to get copyright struck because it was just so close. I think it sounded like Katy Perry in my ear. I mean, it was beautiful, so dang good. So
just close your eyes.
I was shocked. I can't believe. I mean, I think I'm more shocked at the singing than I was at the Xander Bogaerts signing. But I'll take either of them. So fantastic on that one. Yeah, but with Xander Bogaerts, I think it's a fantastic signing. What it shows, and I think it's a new aspect of. I think honestly, there's a lot of teams in the MLB. Let me switch thought here. There's a lot of teams in the MLB who are changing the way that we think about offseason baseball. You can obviously point at the Mets with all the spending. I think San Diego is one of those teams as well because they're not going for positional need. They are picking the best players out there and then deciding where to put them later on. And we're seeing that with Xander Bogaerts. There's no doubt about that because, as I mentioned, there's about 67 shortstops on their 26-man roster, right? So I think I said this exact numbers last time. Right? So regardless, Xander Bogaerts, is he the shortstop this season? Is it Tatis? I mean, is Machado? Does he stay at third base? Kim? There's just so many other selections. My thought process, and I think this is where they're going to go, Bogaerts will play the short, and we will see Tatis in the outfield. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and actually, in preparation for the show, you look at Fangraphs and their roster. They break down their roster. Can you hear me now?
There you go. I hear you now.
Oh, okay. That was weird. Nothing changed. Anyway, yeah, I forget what I was saying. What was your question again, Christian? Repeat that for me, buddy. You had me panicking.
Okay, so what I was saying, you went in and out again, so sorry. But what I was saying was Xander Bogaerts. I think he plays the shortstop position this year. I know there's a lot of other shortstops on the roster. I think he stays the shortstop, and we see Tatis in center field or outfield at least. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what I was saying. When you look up at Fangraphs and their rosters resource page, it looks like they have Tatis scheduled for right field, which is an interesting kind of shift, right? But yeah, and so Bogaerts will be in shortstop, and of course Manny Machado in his final year at third base, and Kim at second. It's a stacked infield because of adding Abreu as well. I think this is a scary looking lineup, and the Dodgers should be worried. And I know we're going to talk about the Dodgers in a little bit, but it's a scary looking lineup all the way around the field.
Yeah, when you talk about this team, I think that they are going to be scary on their bench as well. Like there are going to be players that could probably easily be an everyday starter on some of their other teams in MLB, even some of the other teams in their division that are going to be just part-time players on this squad. And I think that is very impressive. I don't know if they're done yet. I don't know if we see the finished product because as what we've seen so far this year, we can't count out San Diego for making something a huge splash. We see the return of Francisco Tatis Jr. That's going to happen. We're probably going to see that. I'm guessing around May, maybe late April. There's been some rumors that we'll see him around that time. I think that's a fantastic time to have a player back, even if it's just 1 month out. Awesome. That's great. That is going to be a huge impact. Obviously, there's got to be some bad blood, I think, from what happened last year. You got to think that that's been handled. It's been shooken out. It's been long enough. However, though, this is going to be his first time in front of the fans at Petco. Do you see any bad blood? Do you see anything that is going to impact his play? And if he starts off slow, are we going to hear the Boo Birds in San Diego?
That would be something to watch. I think, as far as like on the organizational level, I think, you do your best, to hash through all of the dirty laundry and so on, but there are still stains on that laundry, and so you forgive, but maybe you don't forget. And I think that's kind of where they are there. You got to play them. They've signed them to $1 billion years for, all the money in the world, so they're going to have to put him and play him. It's not like they're just going to dump him because they come to multiple disagreements. But what will be interesting is not necessarily how he's received, but how he presents. Are you coming into the season humbled by the last year and a bit? Are you coming into the season, it is what it is, water under the bridge, let's just move on and forget about it? I think that will go a long way as far as how the fans in San Diego and receive him. I think he is in the driver's seat there in that regard, because he has all the talent in the world and he has the ability to electrify everybody in the building. So I don't know that if he can play well, they'll be just fine. But to me, it starts with how he presents and how he kind of carries himself at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I'm interested on that one. That's going to be a storyline I'm going to be paying attention to. I think even when we're still waiting for him to come back, I feel like his name is going to be up. If anything, we know that they have one of the best managers to handle that situation. Bob Melvin did a great job when all that stuff went down with his motorcycle accident, and then obviously with the actual PED suspension. So, at least he got that going, because what we saw 2 years ago with Manny Machado, Tatis Jr. fighting in the dugout, we can't see that happen again if you want to see them make a full run. And with as much players and as much talent they have in this team, something like that can't let that slip. All right, let's talk about that. As all this talent coming in, Juan Soto, Josh Hader, they came over in the trade deadline. Now you get them a full season in San Diego. Let's start with Josh Hader first. He had a pretty rough go after getting traded over to Milwaukee. He had his ups and downs. It seems like the trade from Milwaukee was good for the Brewers after that. But we've seen Josh Hader be the Rolaids relief player for 2 years in a row, right? So there is definitely potential for him to get back to where he was and be a reliever of the year candidate like we've seen in many years past. What's your thoughts on Hader? Do you think he can get back to that? Do you think last year was just a change of scenery, maybe a little bit too much hype for the guy? Now he's settled down in San Diego. Can he get it back to where he needs to be?
Yeah, I think when I get these questions that, I often kind of, look at it from an analytical perspective, because I think I automatically go right to Fangraphs and take a look at what he's projected at for next season. And I always look at steamer projections because they're notoriously tough on players, more conservative, I should say. And so when I look at those, and then if they look really, really good, then I'm encouraged, and because they are so conservative. And when I look at Josh Hader's, we're looking at 32 saves in 66 innings, and strikeout per 9 at 13.27, collecting 81 strikeouts in 66 innings with an ERA under 3. So, Steamer and Fangraphs say that Josh Hader will be just fine, and it's hard to bet against that. A guy with a track record like his, in all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that he was so taken aback by the trade and surprised by the trade, and all of that goes with it, that may have had an impact on his performance. So I'm not overly concerned. I think he can get right back into it. We're talking about possibly the best reliever in baseball over the last few years, the very best. So I'm not worried, and I think San Diego Padres fans should feel very good about having him come back again for a full season.
I agree. Completely agree. Juan Soto, we know that he is a generational talent as well. He's finally getting paid, I think, the money that he deserves to get paid. I think we're going to see him get paid even more when his contract comes up. However, they avoid arbitration. He's now in the $20 million range, not the 4 or 5 like he was when he was at Washington on that rookie contract. Now we're going to see superstar Soto in the first full year in San Diego. This is a murderer's row, if you will, with what they added. What's your thoughts on Soto in a full year in San Diego uniform?
Well, again, if you're looking at the projections, even better than his season last year. He's projected for 7.1 wins above replacement. Insane. That's a projection. That's insane. 32 home runs, weighted runs created plus of 172. Insanity. And if he can come anywhere close to that, he could single-handedly destroy every other opponent on just about any night. And then you've added in Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado and so on and so on and so on, right? Like, it's fascinating to watch. And they've got him for not only this season, but one more season where he's walking. He's going to cash in and become the richest, the biggest contract in Major League Baseball history. So San Diego is going to get every lick that they can out of this Tootsie Roll, and it's going to be amazing. He's going to go off. I really predict Juan Soto is going to be the 2023 NL MVP.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic. And speaking of MVP caliber, last year we saw that from Manny Machado. He was the runner-up in the National League MVP. Many think that he should have won that one. Paul Goldschmidt had a great season as well. However, he can opt out after this season, and that's pretty big for a player who is really his addition was really the true shift for the culture, if you will, of San Diego when they brought him in 2019. Now, this has to be an all-in year for San Diego. There's no doubt about that. With the fact that Manny can opt out, we're going to see the last year of Soto after that. Tatis coming in, Xander coming in. I think this is really, truly the year that San Diego has to go absolutely all out and try to win that World Series. Not just the NL West title, not just the NLCS. They got to win the whole damn thing, Sean.
Yeah, I think you almost have to, right? You've kind of backed yourself into a corner here. And, again, we keep forgetting, like in this lineup, adding an Abreu at first base, right? Like it's just, to me, it's insane the amount of talent that this team has. And so, but it always ends, right? There's always an end date, and Manny Machado opting out could be the end of something, and so on and so on and so on, right? So if you're San Diego, you're not going to wait around. You're going to pull out all the stops, and I think this is going to be the year. What's interesting, though, is that they continue to find prospects and things and capital to deal to get in these, because now once the season starts, that's all they're going to be able to do, but they will do it because they have no choice, right? And they'll tell you they want to, obviously, but they almost have to at this point, whether they want to or not. They're going to have to go all in and continue going all in every single day and at the trade deadline and all of it, and it's going to be fantastic because they're in it to win it. So I love watching teams that operate that way.
San Diego last year was 89-73, good enough for a wild card, 22 games behind the Los Angeles Dodgers, though. Over under 89 wins for the Padres, John.
Over. I'm going to say over, but they are going to need, I know we've been kind of glowing about the Padres, but they're going to need to figure out that rotation. They've got my notes here. We got Musgrove, Darvish, and Snell. And then after them, they've got two guys who were better relievers than they were starters in Nick Martinez and Seth Lugo. It'll be interesting to see how Adrian Morejon comes back from Tommy John surgery. But this rotation, it's going to need some attention, I think, before they can kind of like run away with things. But I definitely see them being a better team than they were last year and more wins.
Couldn't say it better myself. I'm with you as well. I got San Diego as the over, and we'll hear our full projections of the NL West and what we have them 1 through 5 at the end of the show. All right, let's head over to the Arizona Diamondbacks here. We'll start right off at the beginning with a big trade with the Toronto Blue Jays. We're going to see Dalton Varsho go on over to Toronto. Very big trade. Gabriel Moreno comes over. I think it was an interesting trade. I think it was a great trade for both teams. You could honestly give the nod to Arizona for getting the better bet of the deal because they traded, and I don't know how you feel about this, but they traded some surplus for a very big need. Now, you could say that Toronto had the surplus in the catching department. However, that is a top prospect. That's a generational prospect that you usually don't see traded too often at that age. I'd love to hear your thought process, not only on the Toronto side, but what Arizona's getting back with Moreno.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. First of all, I mean, as a Toronto Blue Jays fan, it was one of those where you're like, oh, a big thing, and then you're like, wait a minute, hold on, because we're giving up quite a bit here, right? And for Blue Jays fans, they're not necessarily as familiar with Dalton Varsho, so that there's a little bit of kind of thinking that you gave up too much. But what I found interesting was Blue Jays general manager Ross Atkins talking about that the Diamondbacks pushed for for big league talent, I should say, not necessarily a number, but they were pushing for big league talent so that they could win ball games. And that's, if I'm a fan of the Diamondbacks, that's what I want to hear. We traded Dalton Varsho as an excellent player and all of that stuff, but they've got outfield depth to spare. And honestly, an outfield that's looking really good, young and exciting for a long time, right? But I would want to hear that, yes, we want to win games. That's what this trade is about. And whether or not it'll help will be interesting, right? Because Toronto felt that they, had to part with one catcher at some point this winter. And it turns out they gave up the most future value in this trade, right? And so it's one of those trades that kind of works out for both teams. The excuse me, the Diamondbacks get Lourdes Gurriel, who is a bat that they, I think, are excited about, not necessarily because he's another outfielder, but because he's a different type of bat. He'll grind out at bats, and he can poke the ball the other way or whatever have you, right? So there's a lot to like about that. And his biggest, I guess, wart, if you will, was his defense, and they don't really need him to do that. And then, of course, Gabriel Moreno is, just like the top catching prospect in all of baseball, and he's going to be a stud. And he has positional versatility as well. He can play a little bit of outfield if you need him to. So I really like this trade for both sides, but I also, obviously as a Blue Jays guy, I kind of focus on that end of it, but I do like it for the Diamondbacks as well, not because of the players themselves, but what I guess it means for their fans and what it signals that, it's not a complete tear down rebuild type of thing, which is, good news, obviously, for them.
Now you have Moreno, who arguably is the top catching prospect in all of baseball. And then you have Corbin Carroll with that outfield, amazing outfield that we're talking about. Baseball America just came out with their top 100 just the beginning of this week, and they put him at number 2, just behind Gunnar Henderson of the Baltimore Orioles. I think you could really make that decision either way. I think you could we might see MLB Pipeline come out with Carroll at number 1 for that aspect. However, I do think those are the top 2 easily, and then you can make that true argument for 3, 4, 5, and beyond. However, Corbin Carroll, I mean, we saw just a little bit of a glimpse last year. I think we're going to be able to see a full season of him. I don't think we are ever going to see him back in the minors unless it's for any kind of rehab assignment. He is, before we get into anything else for the Diamondbacks, this is going to be the most exciting thing that this team is going to be able to enjoy all season long, is watching the growth of Corbin Carroll. I think he is going to be so fun to watch. There are a lot of young players on this team. I know you just got rid of Varsho, who was still kind of a younger player and a player that you built up and found a lot of love fans. But I mean, you have a plethora of prospects coming up. There's a lot to be excited about. And, you got better in my mind. I think Arizona got better with all of and I know we just talked about all the additions San Diego got, but look at all the departures that happened inside this division total, right? We talk about Justin Turner's gone, Cody Bellinger's gone, Brandon Belt's gone, all these players. I'm not even getting to the very tippy top of this, but there's just so many, Trey Turner, right? All of those players make Arizona better. And let's go back to the other portion. This is the first year that they only got to play 13 games against each other now.
Yeah.
So that's only going to help this team even more. I'm really excited for Arizona. I think they are on a very nice progression up. Like if I'm talking stocks here, it's going like this. It's up. It's on the rise for the Diamondbacks. I think this trade is a really good position for them to really settle in, and we can see the Diamondbacks back in contention. And I think in 2 years, and like with a really solid chance if they continue to do things right.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that will have to do with, how Ketel Marte bounces back. And then, of course, even like the Diamondbacks solved their third base issue with Evan Longoria. That's a kind of an underrated move this offseason, but I think it has the potential to pay off rather well for them, on a 1-year deal. So, and I think you've said this like 8 billion times already on this podcast, there's a 1-year deal is not a bad deal ever. So, and I like that. They've got Zach Gallen, I believe still 27, if I'm not mistaken. So, there's a lot to like about this team. Ketel Marte, I think, is the centerpiece of their
And biggest
fortunes
question
over the
and
next
biggest
couple of years.
question mark too. And biggest question mark too, because of what are we going to get from him? Are we going to get 2019 form where he deserved every single penny of that extension, or are we going to see what we saw the last couple seasons where he started to decline a little bit? I don't know if we're going to ever get that 2019 form, but we got to get really close to it if we want to get back Arizona back in contention, especially with as tough as a division as they are. I mean, right now, you talk about, I mean, let's put the Rockies out of it right now, because the Rockies, we don't know what they're doing. I mean, they're in la la land. We'll get to that in just a moment. However, the Giants, you can never really count them out because they're not afraid to spend money. We saw that in the offseason. They just decided to take a business route and walk away from that because of medicals. They still went and got some players. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then obviously the Padres and Dodgers, as of right now, we know that they're not going anywhere. Arizona has a very tough task, even with the fact they got to play with these teams a lot less. Yes, there is an extra wild card, but all those teams are still battling for that extra wild card, except the one who finishes at the top of the division, right? So a really tough shot for Arizona to get in playoff contention this year. However, I do think that they are on the rise to get that done. And that's why I'm going to go first on this one. And I know I usually throw it at you, but Arizona last year finished 74-88. I'm taking the over. I think they're over 74 wins. I don't think it's by a lot, but I think they're over 74 wins. I'm going to say like 78. I really like what Arizona's doing, and I think they're going to continue to rise.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. I don't see them taking a step backward. Let's put it that way, right? So I think, with if Ketel Marte can bounce back and have a better season than even he had last year, even like if he can't be the 2019 version, if he can have a season like he had just last year, a little bit better, which he's projected at, by the way, in case we were wondering, I think they're in good shape. So yeah, I'll take the over as well.
All right, let's move on to the San Francisco Giants. And I believe that this was probably the beginning of one of the craziest things in free agency history. And that was the Carlos Correa saga. We obviously have to talk about that if we're talking about this offseason. He goes and signs a contract with them right before the the press conference to welcome him to San Francisco. They postpone it. A lot of question marks in the air. Maybe, was it a weather delay? Did the Coca-Cola bottle fall out into the outfield? We don't know, right? We didn't know what was going on. We find out that they're not going to sign him. While we're all sleeping, he goes and signs with the Mets. That didn't go through. He's officially now a Minnesota Twin. Crazy. What a crazy saga. MLB The Show, the new video game. I don't know if you saw it, but their new cover has Carlos Correa on the cover wearing a Twins jersey and then two other Correas next to him, one wearing a Mets jersey and one wearing a Giants jersey. I mean, they really hit it spot on. And I don't know if that was a true cover, but I saw it on the internet. And if it's not true, it needs to be true. So perfect. Amazing. Fantastic. Yes. However, this Correa saga, even though they didn't land Carlos, and they also went for Aaron Judge. Let's not forget, they also went for Aaron Judge. It didn't happen. They still had a sneaky good offseason, Sean. I think they really did.
Yeah, I think it's easy to look at their offseason and just focus on the swings and misses, but I don't think that would be doing them justice. I think they did the best they could to kind of rebound from swinging for the fences, in the Aaron Judge, and I often wonder how much he was really leaning towards San Francisco as opposed to kind of using them to get Brian Cashman off his
100%.
100%. So there's that, but the swings and misses are big stories, huge stories. The Correa story will be a story that people joke about now for the next 100 years. But I think that to do that, to focus only on that, would be to do a massive injustice to the rest of their off season. Adding Michael Conforto, which is an excellent gamble, by the way.
Yeah, interesting gamble, but excellent one. Yeah, as well. He didn't play in the league last year, but we know what he can do. He was with the Mets for a very long time. Looked good doing it. He dealt with some shoulder injury. That's why he sat out. I think that was also a strategic move to get a big payday this offseason. And he did get some money in this one. So it did work out for him. 2 years, $36 million. I think that's definitely a gamble. What I'm more interested, though, is the other outfielder. I think Mitch Haniger is another good deal. And I think it's a value pick. I mean, this is a guy that at one point 2 years ago in 2021 was a 30 home run guy. He had some issues last year. I think he was only at 14, if I remember. It's 11 or 14. I can't remember. It's off my head. However, this is a guy that can easily get right back to that, especially in San Francisco. And so now you just added some really good outfield depth, which you absolutely need in that park and what you absolutely need to battle in the NL West.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because he's kind of like, if you look even going back to 2018, he's had up and down seasons. 2018 was 4.8 wins, and then it kind of dropped way down to 1.1, then back up to 2.5, and last year was abysmal. Mitch Haniger is kind of writing us a check right now to not talk about it, so we won't. But he's so you're not really sure what you're going to get, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and looking at his projections, I think he's going to have kind of a bounce back season. I think we're looking at, 20, 25 home runs, maybe 120 weighted runs created plus, and, maybe 2.5 wins above replacement, which is, it's not necessarily going to win you an MVP, but that's not what the Giants are paying for, right? They're paying for a solid everyday outfielder, and I think they've got that in Mitch Haniger.
Yeah, I think that if they get exactly what you just said as the projections, they're ecstatic for what they get from Haniger. I know that they're not getting the Correa or the Judge numbers in this lineup, but what we saw last year, what we saw 2 years ago with this Giant squad, with half the players that we had to Google their names before the season started. So what they did 2 years ago, and then obviously last year was a setback. They were still at 500 though. Gabe Kapler has really turned his whole career around. He had a rough go in Philly. He is perfect in San Francisco, and I think with these players coming in, I think that is going to be a huge addition. Tell me about Ross Stripling. He comes over to San Francisco, obviously with Toronto last year. I think this is a huge get for San Francisco. We saw this a few years ago with Carlos Rondon, Kevin Gausman as well. They bring him over to San Francisco. They kind of have prove me contracts. They don't get the big payday, but they get a couple of years with an opt out. Basically, it's a nice little pit stop before they go somewhere else and get their money. Could be another project as well. However, Stripling had a good year last year, did he not?
Mm-hmm. He really, really did. It started with ever since I think his final year in Los Angeles, Stripling has kind of been that guy where he doesn't have a really defined role, and so the same thing started last year, but then of course injury and Yusei Kikuchi kind of made it necessary that Ross Stripling start ball games, and he took off. He flourished, right? And I think what you saw his contract in the offseason kind of reflect the fact that he was a very reliable starter for the Blue Jays. What's interesting to see now is if that will be, I guess, real, if it'll last, right? Because he is really good at being that kind of swing man, the bulk inning kind of guy. And it will be interesting to see if that continues or if they're just going to just ride him as a starter. And because he's proven that he can do that, in the AL East, by the way, he's going to be facing some tough competition in the NOS. So maybe they lean on him a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if that pays off for them, because you're right. Every year, it seems like San Francisco is taking a gamble in some way, shape, or form. And it just so happens that this year they have a few of them, and I think Ross Stripling is definitely one of those. Not necessarily a gamble in the sense that you're hoping he'll be good. It's more of a gamble in that you're not sure if what you saw at the bulk of last year is the real Ross Stripling, or if he's going to be more serviceable in multiple roles, I think is the gamble there.
Yeah, I think this is always an interesting concept with this team, because we've seen it year in, year out for the last 3-4 seasons that they get these pitchers and they do well for them, but they don't re-sign them. They go find a couple more for, I don't know if you want to call them projects, but risk takers, if you will. Another one, and if San Francisco looked past the dreadful playoff appearances by him last season, and that's Sean Manaea. He comes over into San Francisco. I think this is more of a possible project, because he even went on record saying that he felt like he was being quote unquote lazy at the end of the season, and that's something that obviously can't happen. You got to really change your culture. It's coming over, staying in the division, but going somewhere else. That's really important. Obviously Sean Manaea was very sought after at the beginning of last season when Oakland decided to just sell the ship that was already sinking. What's your thoughts on Manaea? Do you think he can really come back? I mean, the odds are in his favor for what we've seen San Francisco do in the last few seasons with these pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to make a comeback and you're a pitcher, you sign with the Giants, right? Like, yeah. It just makes sense. They do it every year. So, yeah, I think that, that I wouldn't be surprised if that played a little bit, even a small bit into his decision. I like this guy. First of all, I liked him on excuse me, I liked him in Oakland. I liked him. I wanted Toronto to trade for him. I like this guy as a pitcher. And what's interesting, I think, is that he's projected right around where he has been last season overall, not necessarily when he was quote unquote lazy, but he's around 160 innings. He'll give you, almost 30 starts. So, he'll go half a game, 5 innings, maybe 6 if you're lucky. But the ERA is still up like well over 4. So if he can kind of, I don't know, if they can sprinkle some kind of giant magic on him, I think this could be one of those sneaky signings. Is he going to turn it around and pull a Carlos Rodon? I don't think so. But man, if he does, this could be huge for the Giants.
Absolutely. Yeah. Talking about the other side, who the pitcher throws it to, Joey Bart is taking over for San Francisco's catcher ever since Buster Posey went out and retired. There, for the longest time, we've talked about San Francisco with amazing catchers, but I think that's really just been Buster Posey because he was there for so dang long. However, there's a lot of speculation if San Francisco can believe in Joey Bart. However, regardless of the fact, I still think they need to add somebody else to that roster. I think they don't really have. He's the only one on the 40-man, so I mean, take that as you will. However, do you think San Francisco should believe as Joey Bart is the future catcher of this team, or should they go look somewhere else? Maybe your favorite player, Gary Sanchez.
Oh man, I have to be honest. If if the Giants think that their magic is good enough to save Gary Sanchez, then you know what? Plan the parade right now. Just call it a season. No, man, they almost have to, I think, add somebody. Because when you look at, they just DFA'd Austin Wynn. So right now we're looking at Joey Bart and Blake Sobel, a Rule 5 pick. That has got to be some Rule 5 pick. I have to admit, I'm not as familiar with Sobel, but if he's not the next Buster Posey, then I don't know what the Giants are going to do, because Joey Bart, offensively speaking, talent, sure, absolutely. But we're looking at a projection, not even league average bat. And that's going to be tough, in that division, right? So I think they almost have to look to add a catcher, but there's the bigger problem is who, all of the big catchers, everybody's been traded or signed or whatever, right? So anybody they get may be just another Joey Bart anyway. So I don't know what the Giants are going to do in this situation, but at this point, whether you have faith in Joey Bart, you better act like you do, because that's all you got.
Yeah, they definitely have to add before spring training, even if it's a couple invites, minor league deals, whatever it is, and definitely pay attention very hard to that waiver wire, because they need to add some catching depth to their entire roster, not just their 40-man, to be completely honest. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about Joey Bart, but isn't it wild that when we were talking the end of Buster Posey's career, when he was bouncing back between catcher and first base because of his knee and back problems, how everybody was just so excited about, Joey Bart's going to be in there. It's going to be just fine. He was the biggest prospect I think everybody heard of for I don't know how long. And then he hops in and everybody knew he's going to have big shoes to fill. Will he be ready? You can make the argument that he was pushed in too soon, and that might be the case. However, it's been way too long to make that argument anymore, and he has not lived up to the potential by any means to where he needs to be.
Yeah, and we just finished talking about the Blue Jays trading the top catching prospect in all of baseball, right? Like, this is a cautionary tale for all the prospect huggers out there. They're all well and good, but they're just that. It's potential, right? And sometimes potential doesn't realize, and whether or not Joey Bart can turn things around, I mean, he certainly hasn't lived up to that kind of hype where he can just step in and not miss a beat with Buster Posey leaving, right? So it'll be interesting. I really hope, because both for the Giants and for the individual, right? Because you want to see, you want to see everybody succeed. So except Manny Machado, of course, and Gary Sanchez, but those are my personal opinions. Do not represent those of Slasher Sports, of course. But Yeah, you want to see him do well, right? And for the Giants' sake, you want to see him do well, but he's going to have to. I think there's a lot of pressure right now, and if he has another subpar season, they're going to have to look for a full time everyday answer. I think because I don't know how much longer you can continue hoping for Joey Bart to step into that role.
I love that Orioles legend Manny Machado still living rent free in your head. All right, 81 and 81, San Francisco Giants last season. They were 500. Obviously, Carlos Rondon is gone. Brandon Belt is gone. They do bring in some more offense, although it's not a Correa, it's not an Aaron Judge. Can you see them getting over the 500 mark, over 81 wins this coming season?
That's a tough call. Everything has to go right. All of these gambles, I think, have to work. You have a rotation of Webb and Cobb and Manaea and Stripling and Wood and to a lesser extent DeSclafani. That's a rotation of 4 ERAs if I ever saw one. And so it's a tough ask. Everything's going to have to go right for them. That being said, I do have to answer your question, so I'm going to actually go under. I don't know that they even are a 500 team, and that's sad for me, really.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite way. I don't think it's by many, just like with Arizona here, but I am going to say over. I am usually a 3-2 over on these divisions so far, which is actually crazy for some of them, not all of them. But in this case, I do have them over just by slightly because what we saw 2 years ago, how great they were. I think they regressed too far last year. I think they'll bounce back a little bit. I mean, I'm talking like 80, 82, 83, like real, just right there. Right. I don't think that they're going to go too much higher. But yeah, I do see them going over, especially because I do think guys like Stripling and Manaea will do good. And I do like the offensive production. I do like what they added. I think that we're going to really sleep on that offensive production, especially early in the season, because everybody's going to keep talking about, well, they missed on Correa, they missed on Judge. Well, look what they got. And they brought Jock Peterson back. We didn't talk about him. He's been resurrecting his career in San Francisco as well. So I got them as the over. All right, let's talk about the Colorado. Right. Let's talk about the Colorado Rockies. And I think it's honestly, there's not much to talk about. And I hate to say that, but mic check 1, 2, 3. Is this thing on? Because that's what I'm really asking the Colorado Rockies. Last year, we had the WTF award for them with getting to sign Chris Bryant. We really didn't know why they signed that. They didn't pay Nolan Arenado. They wouldn't pay Trevor Story, although that seems to be working out in their favor. But they do go and sign Chris Bryant to a pretty big deal. Chris Bryant didn't have a great season at all by any means last year. Let's check in on him real fast. Let's go look at this outlook for Chris Bryant. Sean, I mean, did he really just sign a contract with Colorado to just basically kill his career? Is that what we just saw with Chris Bryant, just to gain the money and move out? Is that what just happened? Or is this something that we're going to see him resurrect back? I mean, I wasn't a huge Cubs fan when they went through their run, but watching Chris Bryant was pretty magical. Seeing him in Colorado just kind of fade out is really depressing for baseball.
Okay, so I think the first thing is we have to understand that he only played in 42 games, dealing with plantar fasciitis and a back issue. And I think the back issue was from lifting the big bag of money that he stole from the Rockies the previous winter. But but that being said, I think it's important that we recognize that he put up a weighted runs created plus of 125 last year in those 42 games. With an on-base percentage of 376, he hit 306, and he still put up almost a win, right, in just 42 games. So when Chris Bryant is healthy, there is no questioning his abilities and the numbers that he will put up. So the only question is why he's doing it in Colorado. That's the real question. So if he's healthy, he'll be just fine, and the Rockies fans will enjoy having him, and it'll be fine. But he's got to be healthy, and that plantar fasciitis. I'm no doctor, and I don't even play one on TV. But that's a thing that can continue to pop up and cause a whole lot of issues. I remember, even way back, like Troy Gloss had it when he was in Toronto, and it was a thing that kept lingering. So that'll be interesting to see if he can rebound and put that behind him.
Although Colorado really didn't make any noise this offseason during the winter meetings, I think they're hibernating. They did have a departure. Carlos Estevez did head out to Los Angeles for the Angels. That was a pretty big hit, in my opinion. I think Estevez is a great reliever. But they did make a couple moves. They do, on Tuesday, they did acquire Connor Siebold from the Boston Red Sox for a player to be named later in cash. That player to be named later is probably somebody who's not on the roster. Maybe it is. Who knows? I don't know if Boston wants anybody on this roster right now. And they also go ahead and add Brett Suter to the bullpen. I think that's a good good add. I will say that he's towards the right end of his career by far, but losing Estevez, getting Suter, I don't think it's a weighted pickup, but it's definitely something. And then they go ahead and I think is probably the most interesting addition here, Sean, is they add Nolan Jones. And I think this could be interesting only because they get him from the Cleveland Guardians. At one point, he was a very top prospect in the organization. It did seem like through reports that when he got farther up in the system, he started to not really listen to his hitting coaches. He was having some discipline issues. That could easily be fixed with a change of scenery. He could get back. What that means is that he has maybe some behavioral issues, but the potential is still there. So if he goes to a new change of scenery, he gets a new hitting coach that works well with him, he gets back that potential, we could see a pretty big jump and increase back to it. So I think Nolan Jones is a pretty interesting one. However, that's it. That's all Colorado's got. It seems like this, and let me know your thoughts on this. It seems like they are already punting on 2023, and they are ready to maybe make a big splash and surprise us in 2024. I don't know if that's the case, but my mind right now is saying that they're already ready to just punt and just send this one ready to get a nice 100 losses in the L column this year.
Yeah, man. I mean, this wow, this Rockies roster, I honestly don't know. You know, like, are they punting for this season and next season? And like, I don't know what they're doing. I really have no idea how this Colorado Rockies front office thinks. You know, they didn't. You're like you said, they didn't add much. They could have, but didn't. They didn't even. You know, this is how bad their offseason was. Okay, Brendan Rodgers was getting attention. He was getting people interested. The name was out there. They decided they kept him. Okay, cool. That's fine. You know, he's still got 3 more years of team control. He's still young and all that. Great, cool. Maybe they want to see if he can build up his offensive numbers and things like that. Cool. Then they were interested in Jurickson Profar, and now that's not even an option. So I don't know what they're doing. I would love to say, hey, Colorado Rockies fans, it's okay. You've got Nolan Jones is coming, and he's going to put on a show in Colorado. That power is big time power, you know, and that's exciting. But man, I don't know. Let him be a lesson for you, kids. Listen to your coaches, or you will be banished to play baseball in Colorado. That's that's the only thing that I can take away from Nolan Jones. That move, I think, it has potential to work out really well. You know, kind of like revitalize and give some attention back to the Rockies, which I think they deserve, because they were some exciting teams. You know, going back to like the Matt Holliday, you know, that whole team. But this year, yeah, it's going to be bad. The bullpen is interesting for me, though. I think we should talk about how the potential is there. Daniel Bard, their closer, one guy who, you know, and you mentioned Suter, but Dinelson Lamet is a guy who I have always been fascinated with. Lots of strikeout potential there. Hasn't been able to find consistent success, but this is a bullpen that actually, you know, could be rather effective in Colorado. Pitching in Colorado is as effective as anybody can be there. But as back to your original question, this could have been a good offseason for them. But I think you're right. They even, you know, there was a talk of maybe getting some pitching from Miami because they're not going to, Colorado's never going to be able to sign top free agent pitching. You know, Mike Hampton was the last one, I think, if I, you know, off the top of my head. So you would have thought that a trade was coming. You know, in Miami seems to have pitching that they're dangling everywhere. So I thought they may have lined up with a Brendan Rodgers, but I guess that's not happening. So yeah, I think back to your original question. Yep, they're definitely punting on this season for sure, at least.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be 68 and 94 last year. I'm taking the under. I think this is a 100 loss team. I hate to say it. I cannot wait till we get to the back to the point to where we can start talking in a positive light of the Colorado Rockies. It's just not there
Mhm.
yet. Right now, I think they're absolutely punting on this season. When you look at the rest of this division, although the division games don't mean as much as they did last season, it's still obviously a big deal. The rest of the National League, I think this is the worst team in the National League this year. And I know that's not a far stretch from where they were last year, but I see them as a 100 loss team. I'm taking the under.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And it's not even just against like division rivals, fewer games against them. I think it's just the fact that they're just not going to win baseball games, regardless of whether it's in the division. And that's really unfortunate, for their fans and so on. So I hope that it's a short lived rebuild, if that's what we want to call it. I don't know what to call it, but I
Yeah.
hope it's short lived, whatever it is. But yeah, I'll take the under as well.
Yeah, they got to come down from mile high because right now it's just not working out for them. All right, let's go over to the Dodgers and we'll finish out this NL West outlook before we give our preview, our predictions for where we think they're going to sit way too early during this offseason here. And I start off with this with a question mark here with a Dodger decline question mark. Are we going to see a decline? I think it's inevitable. I mean, 111 wins last year. I think we're obviously going to see a decline. So there's my give you. I'm taking the under on the Dodgers this year. And I'll explain why. They erased a lot of salary. I think this might be a reset year. Colorado Rockies are punting. I think the Dodgers are resetting. They erased a lot of salary, over $100 million. Listen to the players they got rid of. Trey Turner, he goes to Philadelphia. Andrew Heaney goes to Texas. Justin Turner goes to Boston. We see Cody Bellinger to the Cubs. Chris Martin goes to Boston. Joey Gallo to Minnesota. Craig Kimbrell to Philadelphia. I mean, it's just a lot of players. And then obviously with the DFA of Trevor Bauer. There's a lot of money that's up there. We finally see the Dodgers for the first time under the first threshold in the collective bargaining tax. This is a very long time since we've seen that happening. It seems like they are also on the reset. Maybe they don't like what they see on their roster. Maybe they are going to let some of these younger guys really show up. They did bring back Clayton Kershaw,
Mhm.
for one more season. And they did sign Noah Syndergaard to a 1-year deal. There's not a 1-year deal I don't like, Sean. So there are some interesting additions to bring in. Obviously, Noah Syndergaard, obviously Kershaw. JD Martinez comes in as well. They did make a trade for Miguel Rojas. I'll break that down in just a minute. But I think we can safely say that the Dodgers are going to decline this season.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't expect a team to repeat 111 wins. That's a given. So I think off the bat, that's true. But I think the decline is more than just they're not going to win 111 games. I think this is a true decline, not just in the wins and losses, but I think just overall. I think not only have they lost a lot of talent, but the talent they do have, some of it's getting pretty old. And Kershaw he keeps hanging on and defying the odds and the doubters and all of that, and good for him. But how much longer, right?
Yeah,
And
35.
I guess all they care about is just one more season, just one more, always one more, right? JD Martinez, though, same boat, getting older, and how much longer can he be an elite bat? It's interesting, because they still are so talented. But you're right. I feel like there's a decline there. And in that rotation, it has a lot of question marks.
It
You know,
does.
Noah Syndergaard is a name everybody knows, but when you look at it and you break down and look at his performances, it's not overly impressive. And so when I'm just going to pull up their entire rotation here, but looking at Dustin May is another question mark for me. Can he rebound and be healthy for a full season? Excuse me. And again, what can they get from Clayton Kershaw? So looking at that rotation, Julio Urias, Kershaw, and Tony Gonsolin is another one. There's a lot of question marks here. And even if they are healthy and they can, give them a full season, we're not talking about a rotation full of Cy Young candidates. Kershaw is great, and he once was, but I think Urias is obviously their ace. But I think
Easily.
it falls off pretty quick after that,
Yeah,
and that
I'm
to
with you.
me is a big problem for them.
Yeah, I'm with you. I did hear there was a report circling around this week that they are looking at giving a lot of money given the bag to Urias, and I think that's a good idea. I think you build around him, like you kind of did with Kershaw over the past decade and a half. Yes, definitely agree with that concept. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that when you see what they added in, a couple old guys to 1 year deals, it seems like they're kind of doing the reset. And I know it could be the question mark. Are they waiting to go all in on Shohei Ohtani when he does not sign a big deal with the Angels? That could be the case. We don't know if we heard that might be the case with also the Padres. So, but 2024 free agent class is huge. So I think we are starting to see teams who are setting themselves up for success. And I know we kind of make the joke about the Rockies punting, and maybe they'll think in 2024. Well, if the Dodgers are resetting and setting themselves up for free agency in 24, we know who's going to win that battle. The Dodgers. They're not afraid to spend money when they will. This is probably the only year we see them below that first tier in the CBT for probably the next 20 years. So if I'm a Dodgers fan right now, it might be a frustrating year for you. However, just remember this: there is that extra wild card spot. There's that extra wild card spot. Even if you are having a quote unquote reset year, I still see the Dodgers in playoff contention, Sean.
Oh, absolutely. This is still a very good team. And so, I was listening to you, say if you're a Dodgers fan and like it's going to be disappointing if you're expecting 111 wins.
Right.
That's the difference here, right? Like this is still a good team. This is still going to be a playoff team. And don't make the mistake of thinking that they're not going to do something at the trade deadline to help in that cause, right? So they're not going to just sit back and say, well, whatever happens, right? Like they're still in it and very much in that mix, but it is definitely going to be a step back for them this coming season, and that's just the reality of being one of the best teams in baseball over an extended period of time, right? It's just there are going to be seasons where you're not necessarily looking like the best, but you're definitely in it anyway.
Miguel Rojas comes over in a trade from Miami. He was like the team leader on that squad with Miami, who obviously has had their own struggles of their own. Now he heads over to Los Angeles. Even though there are a lot of players that are leaving and heading out of that team, he's going to fall into a position where he doesn't have to be that leader. He's going to possibly be the everyday shortstop. That is still a possibility. Obviously, some tough shoes to fill at Trey Turner, but he doesn't have to have that clubhouse responsibility. Rojas is a great player. We've seen some great things from him throughout the years. Obviously, the Los Angeles making that trade, they know what they're getting. I think this could be a nice up year for Rojas. I think this could be a year where he only focuses on some baseball activities, not clubhouse activities, not worrying about community activities or the entire Miami Marlins organization like we've seen over the past years. I mean, that's honestly what he had to do, if you remember that. So when you see this guy and you see that he could be the potential everyday shortstop, I have this is like fantasy. If you're a fantasy baseball guy, he's a sneaky sleeper pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wonder how much he'll be able to contribute with the bat. I don't know that they certainly don't need him to. They don't need to rely on him. He doesn't have to be a Trey Turner, but he will be a very good defender at shortstop. And that, I think, is what you're paying for, right? That's what you're trading for. That's what you're bringing in. And anything he chips in with the bat is just kind of gravy at this point. So in my mind, he'll be their starting shortstop with Gavin Lux moving over to second. And they don't need him to contribute anything really with the bat at all. So anything he can do on that regard is just gravy, but they got him for his glove, very clearly a glove first shortstop, and fits in rather well actually in this Dodgers team.
All right. Well, here we go. Let's break it down. The NL West here, 1 through 5. Last season, we saw the Dodgers with 111 wins win the NL West. That didn't help them too much. They lost the next round to the Padres in the playoffs. So obviously some bad blood at 1 and 2. Give me your top 5, Sean. Go up. You want to start from the bottom like you always do. Feel free. I think I know where you're going with 5, but let me know your 1 through 5 NL West.
All right. The Colorado Rockies. Yeah, I'm starting number 1, obviously. Starting in the bottom of the division, it's the Rockies. And then way ahead of them, Arizona Diamondbacks. In third place, the San Francisco Giants. And in second place, the Los Angeles Dodgers. The San Diego Padres will win the NL West.
I'm with you. I think the Padres are going to win the NL West if everything looks like exactly what we see today. Number two, I'm also going to go with the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are still a great team. Yes, they're going to decline. I don't think they're going to be a 100-win team. I think they'll be battling to get to 90. To be completely honest, they're going to have a huge drop, but they're still going to finish in second and be in contention for the wild card. This is where it gets interesting for me when it comes to 3 and 4. I think 3 and 4, no matter what you put them in position, I think it's going to be really, really close. I'm talking like a game or 2 games between. Right now, though, because I am very high on the pitching additions they added, I'm going to give it to San Francisco. I think San Francisco, I like the Minaya. I like the Stripling pickups. I'm still a little skeptical about the full rotation of Arizona, and they're still a little too young for me, but I like their rise. I think they're on the rise in Arizona, so they're going to get my number 4 spot. And then just like you said, we're going to jump off the tower there, go all the way down, maybe down to the basement, say hi to the Ninja Turtles, and then we'll say hello, Colorado Rockies at number 5. They're really, really deep down there. Again, I think they're going to be the worst team in the NL West, Sean. So we're on the same page. Look at that. I think that's 2 weeks in a row.
That's right. That's right. We're going to get T-shirts made for the mile low Rockies, right? Like that's how bad it's going to be. Like
there's got to be a T-shirt already by that. There's got to be.
There must be. And if there isn't, there will be, because it's going to be bad, unfortunately.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Well, we did have a comment out here while we were on the show. It's from we got a new friend of the show. Look, he's about dropping by again. Hey, OBP, keep up the great work. Thanks, Drixley. And we did see one more for it says boo Dodgers last. So they want Dodgers in last place. So, okay, fantastic. I'm not against that 100% because, I will say I've experienced a lot of stadium trips. Dodger Stadium was my least favorite stadium I've ever been to. Did not enjoy the experience. So I do have a bitter taste in my mind for Dodgers fans, but not Dodgers fans, but the Dodgers period. So, all right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining. Sean, what do you got going on from Jason the Couch coming up? I know there's a lot of things that you're doing in the off season here. A lot of great things. We got a lot of stuff. Spring training is just a month away. What's going on at Jason the Couch?
Yeah, we're ramping up for the 2023 season, kind of refocusing our energies. We've got our main podcast, obviously, Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We stream live everywhere, as well as the audio version everywhere you find podcasts. And then we have the On Feck Circle Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern time, and Sunny Side of the Dome Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Lots of YouTube content, if that's your jam, all of which are also available in audio form. And then, of course, jaysfromthecouch.com has all of your written Blue Jays content all the time. And it's going to be an exciting year to cover the Blue Jays. That's for sure.
Yeah, especially the AL East and those Blue Jays, no doubt about that. We're going to get all those details for you in the show description below once we finish up here. So if you want to find them, feel free to head on over to Jays from the Couch. As for OBP, not only are we going to continue these live shows, I know we are Thursday night, but we're going to get back to our normal schedule. Every Wednesday night, we're going weekly now. We're done with those bi-weeklies. We're back to a weekly schedule. We're getting too close. Pitchers and catchers are coming to report. Well, OBP is reported early. We're reporting weekly now. Every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, we'll be with you live. And also on the page, if you head on over to our YouTube page, which you have seen, we are growing with subscribers. So thank you very much for that. If you are watching this, you're not subscribed, please consider hitting that button, hit that bell and that like and all those good stuffs as well. But you will see a lot more content other than our live show. This will be our flagship every Wednesday night, but you'll see daily content starting to pop up here at the OK Baseball Podcast, keeping you updated with everything MLB. All right, Sean, let's get out of here. Let's put a bow on this pig. This was a fantastic episode. Next week, we got our last outlook, our next outlook. That's it. And then we are finally outlooked from east to west. We're going to go with the AL West here. This is something that I'm excited for because I'm moving towards one of those areas. I'm going into the AL West territory myself. So we'll dig in that to it. But everyone, thank you so much for joining. We'll be back here with another episode of the OK Baseball Podcast next Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern.